I look forward to talking to Mike Lentz because I got to tell you something. Just reading the first two paragraphs of the story I'd seen in the Wall Street Journal, I was like, I got to get this guy on the radio because this is kooky. Mike, you lived in Colorado. What were you doing in Colorado?
Oh, well, I was working in politics, of all things, working the election out there in 2016, and just kind of decided that a career change might have to happen.
Yeah.
And then, of course, things just fell in that I could move out to Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you're there. What part of Colorado were you in?
I was living in Centennial, Colorado.
Okay.
Which is about a southern suburb of Denver.
Yeah.
To give you an update on that one.
Okay.
I grew up in Grand Junction, Colorado, which is in western Colorado.
Good. Do you remember John Curley at KJCT, Channel 8, doing the weather?
Oh, absolutely, I do.
Oh, you're lying, Michael, you don't remember me. But anyway, so you leave Colorado and you go to Pennsylvania. This is where the story just gets weird. You get a job working at Chick-fil-A, right? Great Chick-fil-A, great sandwiches. I mean, the customer service there is second to none.
Absolutely.
Then you decide.
My pleasure.
Yes, my pleasure. Then you decide, you know what? Since I'm living over here, did you always love American history and more specifically the Battle of Gettysburg?
I did. I mean, from a very young age, about 5 or 6 years old, it attracted my attention. I grew up in the 90s, and so that was kind of peak time to get in on the Civil War side of things. You had Ken Burns, you had the movie Gettysburg, you had the movie Glory. So it really was one of those moments where if you wanted to get interested in the Civil War, that was a decade to get interested in the Civil War.
So Ken Burns' great documentary, Gettysburg, here's a little bit of it.
Exactly at 1 o'clock, a giant artillery barrage intended to soften up the Union defenses before the attack began with a deafening explosion. Meade had just left his commanders finishing their lunch. As an orderly served them butter, a shell tore them.
The war, really, this was the turning point of Gettysburg on the 1st to the 3rd of July with 51,000 lives lost. So you have interest because growing up in the 90s, Ken Burns sparks it in other movies as well. And then you decide that you want to take on this Herculean task of being a tour guide there for the Gettysburg National Military Park, the National Park Service. Did you have any idea what you were stepping into when you said, oh, I think I want to be a tour guide?
I mean, I did a little bit. I visited Gettysburg in 2018, and I thought, hey, you know, I came out here, saw what they did, saw what these guys were doing. I went, hey, I could do that. And so I did a little bit of research. And I went, my background is I have an undergraduate degree in history.
Okay.
So history is my passion. It's my love. And so for me, I looked at this and I say, hey, these guys are going out onto the battlefield, showing people the battlefield, and they're getting paid for it. How cool is that? So I decided, you know what? The time was right in my life to just pack everything up in 2019 and move to Pennsylvania.
Mike, not that I'm trying to talk you out of this, but they pay you $50,000. Is that what you make?
Let's call it a little side hustle with benefits. But yes, I mean, that's basically what it is. It's not. You're not going to get rich in the history game. Let's just put it that way.
Oh.
The history game is not somewhere you're not going to. There's not everyone's going to get a multi-million-dollar book deal. Not everyone's going to be David McCullough, right?
I got it.
So it's one of those things where if you have a passion in it, you basically have only a few avenues. You can be a curator of a museum. You can be a teacher. In this way, I found a way of doing that, of being a teacher, but being able to do it on my terms and out on the battlefield, sharing a passion for what I have interest in with people who are visiting this beautiful place.
So before we get to talking about the test that you have to take that so few have ever succeeded at passing, if you and I sitting there having a bar and having a drink there in Gettysburg, what is it emotionally, Mike, that hits you about the Battle of Gettysburg deep in that soul of yours?
It's just how incomprehensible it was. I mean, this is an absolutely insane event. For 3 days in July of 1863, 165,000 men fought each other on the hills, the farm fields, and even through the streets of the town of Gettysburg. Something like that, as Americans, we really don't completely understand. And so to get this notion of how these human beings in this extraordinary circumstance had to deal with this absolute tragedy and cataclysm is truly a gripping story and worth one telling.
Over and over and over again.
Yes. And the amazing thing is that when you do a deep dive on these guys, and I love Ashokan Farewell, which you're playing there in the background.
Yes.
But the thing is, these men, as you read their sources, their diaries, their letters, they become human beings. And so what you get here is, you said the 51,000 fallen, 51,000 casualties. That's 51,000 stories directly impacted or ended at Gettysburg. And so doing justice to them, their memory, and their stories is something I want to do. I want to be a steward of their stories.
Wow. I didn't know I was going to get that from you.
Look at you.
You got to get this job. You've got to pass this test, Mike.
I will tell you, I mean, this is a heavy place. It really is. If you get deep into it, you can walk a part of the battlefield, and I'll admit it, I've broken down weeping because you get these soldier stories, you get their voices, you get their words, and you know that not all of them that you read survived in that one spot. You're standing on the spot where they died.
Mm.
That's a huge thing. That's a huge weight, and it's a huge responsibility to tell their story correctly, which is why the test is so hard.
Yeah, because they don't want just some guy coming in, that was working at Chick-fil-A and then decides wants to do this. So, are you ready to take a little quiz?
Sure, go ahead. Hit me.
Oh, you're going to knock these out of the park. This isn't fair, but here we go. I mean, I hope you get these, because, Mike, if you don't get these, you're like, what? You better get back to the drawing board. This elite federal unit skirmished with a Southern brigade of Alabamians during the morning of July 2nd, 1863 in Pitzer's Woods. Which was it, if you need help? Was it the 1st Minnesota Infantry? Was it the 1st United States Sharpshooters? Was it the 2nd United States Sharpshooters or the 20th Marine Infantry?
Well, in this case, it's Hiram Berdan's green outfitted 1st U.S. Sharpshooters. But what doesn't get told is that the 3rd Maine Infantry is there with them fighting alongside.
Wow.
Holy cow. I tried to pull the hardest one I could find. In this Southern Brigade, spearheaded Major General McLaws attacked on July 2nd. Brigadier General Wolford Georgian Brigade, Brigadier General Joseph Kershaw, South Carolina Brigade, or was it the General Barksdale, Minnesota Brigade?
Well, if you're Minnesota Brigade, Barksdale is Mississippi Brigade.
Sorry.
Man.
Look at you. Come on.
By the way, there's an interesting story about William Barksdale.
Yeah.
Barksdale was a congressman before the war, and things got spicy in Congress in the decade leading up to the Civil War, where people actually came armed to the chamber. Well, one time the debate became so heated that they actually started doing fisticuffs on the floor of the House. A representative from Illinois came down to kind of call out Barksdale and fight him right there on the floor.
Yeah.
So he comes down, he grabs Barksdale's hair, and then he swings. Barksdale goes down to the ground, but his hair stays in this man's hand. Barksdale wore a wig.
Yes.
And the fight stopped. Everyone turned and laughed. And went, oh, and so that's what diffused the fight. Was then Barksdale got up, grabbed his wig, and put it wrong way for him. So, yeah.
Good boy. The knowledge is going all the way to D.C. Yep. So when do you take the official test, Mike?
I take the official test on December 7th, so a date that will live in infamy.
Yes.
Coming up here on Saturday.
And how you feeling about it?
I'm prepared. I couldn't say I'm ready, but I'm prepared. And in answer to your question, the one that has the most impact is William Barksdale's brigade. All of them have great ones, but they're the ones that crashed the peach orchard and unraveled the Union position. But anyway, I feel prepared. I'm going to test that preparation. I really want to do this. I really want to be a part of this, and I thank you so much for having me on.
Michael, I want you to get it. 180 questions plus the 3 essays included, and then we're going to check back with you after you get the test after the 7th of December. We'll all be thinking about you, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, Mike.